All right, well, here we go. We jump back in. Olly, how are you doing?
Okay, not too bad.
You're looking great.
Thank you very much, darling.
I love the way you've done your hair. Far more control than I've got.
Your hairdresser's on strike, I can see.
Haven't seen them in years.
Right. That's right.
I have to check if they're still around. They might. No, it's only teachers on strike, so no, the hairdressers around. Don't get me in trouble. What are we going to talk about today? We're going to sort of touch on financials and what's happening out there in the market.
Why not? Go for it.
Okay, well, why don't we jump in? And there'll be a delay as this gets out, but it gives us a chance to talk. OCR. So we're going to have that again this afternoon. What's your thoughts, and what do you see around this?
Well, the official cash rate, the OCR, is supposed to come out this afternoon. We had the same session a few weeks ago, and I had a guess then. I happened to get it right. It went up 0.5%. The talk around town now that it'll go up another 0.25%.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I spoke to Adrian Orr of the Reserve Bank. He's a good mate of mine. I had a little chat to him. I said, look, you shouldn't put the OCR up at all. And he said, well, you talk to Chris Hipkins, you know.
Yep.
And so I
another good mate?
Another good mate. And I had talked to Chris, had a few beers with him, and I suggested that they should not put the OCR up. And we'll see this afternoon. I have some influence, you see. So I talked to Adrian. I said, look, mate, you should just keep it where it is, just like the Australians. The Australians
good point. Good point.
Right. Adrian wasn't so keen about that, but he said he might put it up 0.25%.
A quarter.
So it was I'm arguing with him. When we leave here, I'll be arguing with him again. As you know, have a cup of tea.
And Chris, was he, did you have a beer in person, or was he calling in from the club in Hutt?
He came to see me at Hutt.
He came around home?
Yeah. No, it
nice
happens all the time, no problem.
Yep.
And Mrs. Ardern as well. Yeah, both of them, yeah.
Well, she's got time up her sleeve now.
Right.
So, okay, well, you might have saved us from 50 basis points to 25 or maybe zero.
Should be a pause.
Not many people thinking zero. Most people are, as opposed to Aussie, most people are thinking 25.
But the trouble is that the Reserve Bank and everybody who's running the show don't seem to realise that if they put interest rates up, there's a long time lag before it actually has an effect.
Yeah. Yep.
So all the interest rates that have come in the past, interest rate increase, are starting to affect now. It takes up to 6 months.
Yep.
So raising interest rates again today, there'll be no effect for 6 or 7 months. Already we can see effects going. So hopefully it'll stay at a pause rate, but who knows? I've told Adrian that, and I hope he's listening. So we already see signs of the early interest rates affecting the market, as you know.
Yep. Okay, so they're now, the danger is they start loading, they continue to load in before the first lot of effects. It's almost like taking medicine. You didn't see anything and you keep jabbing the poor kid with something until they've had too much.
Yeah.
And that could be coming. Do you think we're sort of getting towards the end of the cycle or towards the top of it right now for this time around?
I think so. I think the market can't bear much more. We've already got signs all over the place. We can talk about mortgagee sales. We can talk about arrears of payments. We can talk about debt not being paid back in time. There's arrears and loans, all that sort of thing. These are signs that things are starting to fall apart in the background. There were several companies went under, that Easy Buy, what have you. So there's a sign there. And of course, when the statistics come out that mortgagee sales are increasing, and the pundits come out and say, it's only 1.6% of all the mortgages, but that's bull dust, because it's far bigger than that. Because when a bank makes an arrangement with a customer, when they've made an arrangement, that doesn't become part of the statistic. So 90% of people are making arrangements with their bank, and that doesn't get mentioned. You say it's only those who are seriously in arrears and on the point of mortgage sales, and the bank can't deal with it. By the way, it's to the bank's interest not to have too much,
to have them coming through.
Yeah.
Do you think the work that's been done over the last sort of 10, 15 years, less than 15, has protected the bank's position better than, say, when we went into GFC, where it was chaos, and now they've tried to get away from the margins, so everybody's a little bit safer with the lending?
Well, you explain that to the banks that fell over in the last few weeks in Silicon Valley and Credit Suisse and others. It shows you how fragile the system is, and the mistakes they made taking their spare cash and buying government bonds or treasuries, as they call them, which have very low interest rates and a long time before you get the money back. I don't know if our banks do the same. Probably do. It's tricky. It's tricky, but the market is showing that it's starting to fray the edges.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think more interest rates are more damaging than it's worth.
Yep.
They do.
Well, we've seen that. You touch on the mortgagee sales. So in my mind now, I treat them as distress sales, and that it's almost like the iceberg analogy. The tip of the iceberg, visible to us, is the mortgagee sales, and it's reported that they're going up. Under the water, it's the greatest volume, which is the distress sales.
That's right.
And they're the ones that will, I believe, will have to go to market at what I'd call an exit price. So we can see now the market start to change on that. We're trying to achieve X for our property, but the neighbour is X minus 20 to get out of it.
That's right.
That's where the new market sits.
That's right.
Until they've all sold and you're the last one standing and somebody has to pay your price.
Yes, right. It's interesting. The banking crisis that we experienced overseas, it shouldn't be underestimated.
Okay.
And the banks are tightening up a lot. And the banks have anticipated this any interest rate rises. So I don't think the banks will raise their rates much of it all, even if the OCR does go up, if Adrian doesn't listen to me. So
will you phone him up straight afterwards and ask him what the hell he thought he was doing?
I'm going to give him heaps.
Give him a whipping.
I'll give him a,
Invite him around home. No sugar in his tea.
Caning on his feet.
Say, mate, we've run out of money. No sugar.
Well, it's not funny for the people who actually pay. And, of course, there's people are refinancing or re-locking their mortgages now. I was talking to somebody only yesterday. They got a mortgage readjusted to 6.5% from 2%.
Wow.
Now, that's almost 3 times more.
Wow.
And this is, it brings tears to your eyes.
Yep.
And, of course, there may be changes to the LVR rules.
Which is the next instrument they'll play with. So if we tap out on where the OCR sits, now it's the LVR. So just for people listening, LVR?
LVR's loan-to-value ratios. The bank will, instead of looking at the property so much and needing money against the strength of the property, they'll look at the people's income. And so, look, as an example, this person is earning, say, $100,000 a year. There's a figure. We will only lend 7 times his or her salary. That's $700,000, which doesn't buy you much in Auckland. And if there's a couple, man and woman, or man and man, or woman and woman, and they have a double income, say $200,000 a year, they'll discount one of them because for sure one of them will not be able to work full time. So they'll only say, well, it's $150,000 a year, see, times 7, whatever that is, it's 1.2 million, so the value of the house becomes second in many ways. Have I explained that, or have I lost you?
No, that was very good. I was just working out which one was going to have the baby and who's at home looking after the child. That's pretty good. Either can do that.
Both of them.
Here's the challenge with that. That it just doesn't work with New Zealand incomes and New Zealand house prices, does it?
Of course not.
like where do you start from? You can't reset this and get it back to a number that makes sense.
Well, I think the powers that be would like to see a real property crash that brings prices down to where people used to be able to afford them. And many people, of course, have got such big equities in their houses, it doesn't matter. But for the poor sods that were talked into buying their first home a year or two ago by the powers that be and said, the market should be tilted in favour of the first home buyer. Tilted, I don't know where that word came from, dopey. That's why they brought out all sorts of rules and regulations against investors and dealers and all sorts of punishments to tilt the market towards first home buyers. So the first home buyers tilted themselves into the market and bang. Now, of course, isn't it dopey? They've just raised pensions and social welfare, wage rises for everybody. That's inflation. And the moment they do that, up go interest rates, take it all away again. Figure it out.
How would it be a 30-year challenge to get the LVR to a number that was logical? Because you'd have to do it gently. No one in New Zealand's going to accept a crash, even though we've still got we're trying to build a recession.
Well, I don't think there'll be a crash. I'm an optimist because look in Australia, prices are starting to go up again.
Yeah.
And certainly the prices are surging, as they say, which is a sign of, I think people are just not going to take any notice of interest rates. I remember back in the 80s, interest rates were 18 and 20%, and house prices were going through the roof. So let's just accept it.
And two mortgages. There was a first mortgage, second mortgage,
third, fourth, fifth.
and a third mortgage.
And how you paid your interest was by revaluing your property and pulling out some more money against the value to pay the interest, you see, because the house prices were going up 30, 40% a year. I tell you, it's good fun.
Which was the investors' trick through the middle of the market, wasn't it? Really revaluing and saying, "Hey, got more equity here."
People using their house as an ATM machine, asking for trouble. Ordinary people are doing it too. How else were you supposed to pay the interest? You had to drag the money out of your equity, and pay the interest that way. Hope and borrow, and hope. Borrow and hope.
So now we see the challenges. Yeah, pay more. Create inflation, interest rates up, draw the money back off the people. Nobody's better off, and in fact, you affect the ones that didn't get the increase in the whole market as you go through.
And rentals are going up. Rent prices.
Yeah.
Rent. We're heading for if we're not careful, we're heading for a perfect storm. This sudden increase in interest rates is going to do a lot of damage the wrong way. It may reduce inflation. It may reduce inflation, but it may make it even worse. Might happen. Inflation is better than a recession. I remember talking to Muldoon about that. The choice between a crash and inflation is no choice. Rather have inflation if you have to have it.
Interesting, isn't it? Maybe you need to talk to Grant also. Grant. Line these guys all up.
I do. I talk to all of them. Phone's red hot. They're lining up at the door.
And talk to the other Chris. You've got a Chris on each side now.
That's right. Right. Oh, yes. But the light showing off his head gets in the way.
Chris and Cross.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we do this? So, and that's great. I think that touches on where the OCR could be going. If they get it wrong, they have to answer to you. It touches on the challenges around that and the other instruments that are going to come into play with LVR. Why don't we'll swing off, and this is something we spoke about a little bit earlier, and we'll add sort of a bit of real estate into it.
Yeah, sure.
And there was some discussion we had around agents and agents' feedback. So we're going to go completely away from the financial side.
Okay.
And we'll jump into the real estate side. Now, vendors hat on and agents' feedback. What's your thoughts?
It's just finishing off some discussion we had in the last three sessions. When you've got your property on the market and you haven't decided on a price, it's up for negotiation or up for auction, the agent's job is to bring feedback from people who come through the door and have a look around. He takes notes, and he should present once a week at least, if not twice a week, a written document, to the vendor, showing this person, the name of the person, A, B, C, D, and their comments. What they liked the place, what they didn't like about the place, what they thought the price range was, and so on. Just like that. So assuming 10 people went through the place, maybe 8 left a comment, that should go to the vendor to give them a chance to work out where they're going. And that sort of feedback is important. If your agent doesn't do that, then you give them a kick in the butt and say, I want feedback, not just over the phone, I want it written so I can read it. Don't get a lazy agent. It's important to have that because it'll give you a clue where the market's going for your particular property.
Do you think, what's your thoughts on the feedback coming? This will be a really interesting, I'll be very interested in this. What's your thoughts on the feedback coming from agents? Are they dead set honest with the price? Are they trying to hear a price to keep the vendor happy? What do you think?
I think, well, we must remember agents say that they're working for the vendor. And if they're working for the vendor, they should be telling the truth. But in real life, they're working for themselves and the vendor a little bit, and they'll work for the purchaser if they can get a deal across the line. I didn't say that, but I can say that, you don't. So they're working for the vendor, and they'll probably polish the apple a little bit and give feedback that suits the picture.
Yep.
Just to get the owners of the house to see reality, because the owners of the property, if it's you, often away with the fairies of what the place is worth, and they have to be brought down to earth and say, look, you want $3 million for your property. It's a bag of old bollocks, and you're only worth $2 million on a good day. See? And you have to reduce the expectations to the real life. As I told you last time, that people always think that their place is worth more than what the market does. And of course, if the feedback is bad, then you have to reconsider what you're doing, whether you should reduce the price or pull it off the market, for that matter. So not everybody has to sell. Yep. Most people would like to sell, but if they can't sell, they just sit where you are and make do with what you've got and be happy.
Yeah, write it out, stay where you are. Quite often I'll be talking to a client and say, look, this house will simply not fund what you're planning. It's a reality.
That's right. And the problem is, of course, another thing, while I thought of it, vendors have to tell the truth to the agent, who must tell the truth to the buyer.
Yep.
If there's something wrong with the place, if there's a fault of some sort, or something hasn't got its code compliance certificate, or they've put on something or built something or changed the wall inside, not telling, they've got to tell, because the agent doesn't know. And if the agent knows, he's got to pass that on.
100%.
And boy, there can be big suing cases. Yep. I mean, I'm sure you're a big suer as well. It's a joke, maybe not that. The owner of the particular purchaser needs to know if there's any problems with the property, and the truth should not be hidden. And
I think that's something. So the agents have REA, the Real Estate Agents Authority, sitting down in Wellington, and I think that's actually done a really good job of cleaning up disclosure. 20 years ago when I started, we didn't want to know about a problem. If we didn't know about it, we'll sail through. Yeah. Today we want to know about every problem, and we want to make sure that that's all recorded in writing and it's all communicated. So I think they've actually got that pretty well right. But there's still going to be some people that are weak and scared and
the vendor
worried about passing it on.
I was dealing with a person a little while ago. They made major alterations to the interior without anybody telling anybody. Shifted walls around, actually reduced the number of bedrooms, was dopey, because the more bedrooms the property has generally, more it's worth. They reduced the number of bedrooms. When it came to sell, there was no code compliance certificates. It was picked up. They had plans, and plans had changed, and they got a fraction of what the place was worth. It really affected their lives because they were just too mean to get somebody to check it.
When we go in now and the agents do the CMA, the comparable market analysis, we literally have a statement sitting in that saying, hey, look, this is what we think it looks like. You know, and I'll also argue that CMAs are nonsense. But legal requirement, so you give it your very best shot, but we've got a statement sitting in there saying, look, this will change though. If there is a defect on the property, and that could be on title, that could be on the sign off with the council, it could be on construction. And some of those things are found out as we go through the marketing campaign.
And buyers too should take action. If a property's on a slope, for instance, especially after all these floods, and things, they should get an engineer in to check whether the slope means anything. If they're retaining walls, should get definitely, if they're retaining walls, get an engineer to check them. And the foundations of the property, whether there are cracks in it, all sorts of things. So an engineer's report, expensive as it is, it's worthwhile getting to.
There's a lot of people who would spend less on due diligence on a house than they would on buying a car.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Crazy, isn't it?
They go to a dealer, take the car and drive off it. Well, they trust the dealer, and you can get caught. Buying a house is a big deal. It's much more complicated than you think. But, we get there.
So I think that's good. So the feedback goes in both directions. And then I think the feedback coming back to the vendor, I like your comment there, sort of, the agents polish the apple. Fiduciary, working for the vendor. The tension in that, they're working for themselves at the same time. They want to see a deal come together. But I think, again, the regulation has pulled the industry back to being cleaner, which is a deal at any cost is not a good deal. It's got to be a deal that's not going to be come unstuck in the future, and we're not going to have parties litigating with each other as they go through.
Yeah, I remember the crazy days of 30, 40 years ago. Agents were just wild animals and telling lies blatantly. Really. Okay, well, that's a lot of fun. What's the next subject you want to talk about?
Well, I think that probably wraps us up.
Right.
That wraps us up. I think we can do this off air. Just share the name of your hairdresser, and I'll tidy myself up before we do this next time.
It's okay. I'll get over it.
Excellent. Thanks, Olly. Okay. Really, really appreciate it, and great value for everybody
Thank you very much.
listening and watching.
See ya.
Thank you.